I know. Right in the middle of your Olaf story. All right. All right. We left off yesterday talking about oils. We'll probably leave off today talking about oils. So what are we at? Like number 5, types of oils. We talked about straight mineral oil. Now we're on B, which is ashless dispersant.
I got a question on the straight mineral oil.
Yes.
You talked about how it's used for break-in and how you don't want to use it for a long period of time after the break-in.
Correct.
What's the advantage of it if it doesn't pick up the sludge and allows the sludge to fill? Why do you want it?
Well, near as I can figure, it's a crappy oil, so it allows the rings to make more contact with the cylinder wall and thus causing break-in, as opposed to a really good oil that would protect that from happening.
Okay, so it just
My
allows
words.
a little bit of that.
Yeah.
That actually is a good explanation.
Well, it's the
Why
best
would
I
you
can come
use
up
that
with.
for break-in and not the regular stuff?
Yeah. Okay, ashless dispersant oil. So what if I have my example? Also called AD oil. What does AD stand for? Normally, what does it stand for? Airworthiness Directive. Yeah, didn't think that one through, did they? All right, examples. So what are the some examples? Well, Aeroshell, Aeroshell W80 or W100. All right, so note the W. What does W stand for? Wait, I heard it. Winter.
I thought it was like winter weight.
Yeah, don't write that down. In cars, that kind of does stand for that. In aircraft, it doesn't. And I don't know why they did it this way. But no, the W indicates it is AD or ashless dispersant oil. Yeah. Yes. You want to know what something says.
The symbol between 80 and W, I apologize. Okay.
Or just write down something. You don't even have to write exactly what I write. You know, it's like, all right. So what does ashless mean? The term ashless. What's that? Might be right. The term ashless means
doesn't carry ash.
if all the additives were burned in a beaker, it is actually, there would be no ash remaining. There would be no ash remaining. All right, why is that important? So, I have this written down here, and it's like, wow, that couldn't have been a worse sentence. I'll restate. So compounds or additives, I get that, additives that leave ash, are usually metallic. Compounds.
So the ash that they leave behind is metallic?
Yep. No, say that again.
The ash that they leave behind?
No, it means that if you burned it and it left ash, then it came from a metallic compound.
Oh, okay.
So if it is a metallic compound that is being used as a additive, then you have a problem. So that ash are usually metallic compounds. Metallic compounds in combustion chamber can cause hot spots and pre-ignition. So, metallic compounds in combustion chamber combustion chamber can cause hot spots. What's a hot spot? What's the problem with that? Yep, it makes a glow plug, which means I'm going to get
Detonation.
pre-ignition, which then causes detonation and dynamic disassembly.
Dynamic disassembly.
There's got to be a joke in here somewhere about the ash, and somehow there's got to be a hole, so you have an ash hole, but I can't put it all together. All right.
That was a good one.
Just ask permission first.
So there we go. So we got the ashless part down. So dispersant means that the oil suspends the compounds or contaminants. Remember how we talked about mineral doesn't suspend it, it just kind of slings it out, so you end up getting sludge. Not that you don't get sludge anyway, but more sludge. You get the sludge. And the ashless dispersant, sometimes it's called detergent oil. Now you can see why. It means that the oil suspends contaminants. In the oil, and carries them to the filter. Carries them to the filter. In other words, it disperses the contaminants. So if we back up a little bit, we had mineral oil. What was my example of mineral oil? Does anybody remember? Like Aeroshell 80, Aeroshell 100. How about ashless disbursement? You have W80, W100. So it's the W that's getting that. Okay, so that's, and of course, these are what we call a straight weight oil because it's just 80 or just 100. So now we know 4 oils, right? We got Aeroshell 80, 100. Those are just mineral used for break-in, but not on.
Turbocharged.
Specific Lycoming turbocharged. I think Continental, they still let you use it. What else? You know, turbocharged engines, not only do you have the turbocharger, then we'll talk about this next class more, but you not only have the turbocharger that has to have pressure oil fed to the bearing, but the controllers that control the wastegate, which is, you know, the thing that opens and closes on the exhaust, it tells the turbo to speed up or slow down. Those are all controlled by oil pressure. Okay, and then we talked about the ashless dispersant, which is used for after for the life of the engine.
Everyday use.
Yeah, and so the W pretty much means.
Ashless dispersant.
There you go. Okay, so those are straight weight oils. Let's talk about multiviscosity. Multiviscosity oils. Let me see. What pictures do I have? There we go. What kind of oil is this then? Aeroshell 120, 180, and 65. Mineral. You got it. Or sometimes we'd say straight mineral oil, indicating, because technically speaking, what is this? Ashless dispersant, but it's still mineral oil based, but we call it AD oil or ashless dispersant. So then we call this straight mineral oil, meaning not, but this is still mineral oil with additives. So same stuff.
Not straight.
And then we got the multivis oils. Multiviscosity. All right, multiviscosity. What do we got?
Car engine oil
Huh?
now?
What?
Car engine oil?
No.
Like that, where
No.
it starts off thick and gets.
Yes, just like that. So examples. Examples. Well, we've got Aeroshell W15 W50. What's the W stand for? There you go. It is a semi-synthetic. So what does that mean?
It's part synthetic, part real. Or
50-50. Part dinosaur, part man-made. It's part dinosaur, part recycled soda bottles and nylons or something. Okay, the first W is for AD. Could have just called it AD, but whatever. The second indicates the weight of the oil. The second indicates the weight. The weight of the oil at 0 degrees F. Not winter. Not winter. All right, so if we take a look at this, at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, it's going to be at what weight? 15. Right, 15. So, and then as the oil heats up, it's going to get thicker or thinner?
Thinner.
Well, let's think about that. If I'm up in Alaska, because it's, or where does it get to be 0? Not here. Minnesota, Oregon, Washington. Right? I go outside, it's 0 degrees. And I take a sample of my oil, it's going to be 15 weight. And if I take off and the engine heats up, what happens to the spaces between all of the crankshaft? Increases. So do I want my oil to get thicker or thinner? I'd want it to be thicker.
You want it to be thicker,
But the oil's going to heat up, so it's going to get thicker. It's got to get thicker, people. I know, I mess with you a little bit. You'd think that, so if I took 80 weight oil, just straight weight W80, and I take it to 0 degrees and I pour it and I put it in one of the Saboth things and I measure it and it takes so long to run out and I say, okay, now I take the oil and I heat it up to 200 degrees and I pour it, it should pour faster, right? Okay, so you're thinking right. But now we're talking about a multiviscosity, which its job is to, when it's cold, be as thin as possible, and as it gets hotter, it's got to thicken up.
Really?
Okay, well, think about
Reverse engineering.
one of the things I thought that I read was, well, it's like spaghetti. So when spaghetti is cold, the noodles are cold.
They're hard.
Yeah, they're kind of hard and small, but you put it in boiling water and heat it up, and it swells up. Right, so this swells up. So it's engineered that way to do that. So it's going to go from 15 to 50. So that makes it really nice, because when you're selecting oil, if we go, and I'll talk more about this, I'm sure, later. I know I do. But when you're selecting oil, like around here. So often in the winter time, if somebody wants a straight weight oil, and let's just say they have like a small, like a Cessna 150 or something, smaller engines are a little more susceptible to this stuff. So it's winter time, and I have a choice. Most people are going to want the 80, the W80, right? Because it's cold, or a little bit thinner oil. Then summer comes around, and it's 120 outside, and they're flying around, and 150 doesn't have an oil cooler. So, oil's getting hot, and they do. We watch that temperature gauge. When I flew my little 150, that was always my limiting thing, because I had CHT temps on my 150. And I'd watch it, and my cylinders were all like 380, which is really good. But I would look it over at the oil temps getting hotter and hotter. And one thing I hate about airplanes, this is what the gauge looks like. And then a red line right there, I should have wrote. And there's the gauge. Right? And then the needle is just kind of, right here. Well, what the heck does that mean? Or if it's right here, what's that? And so one of the things I did in my shop, it started with a customer coming in and complaining about their oil temp just being so hot. And they're just like, I don't know what to do. I've taken to all these different shops, or they'll call and they're like, well, we check your baffling. It's got brand new baffling on it, all the seals on it. Okay, well, I guess we could go, check your oil cooler. It's been off, it's been cleaned, it's been, it's been recertified, brand new, Vernitherm. Vernitherm is this thing right here that controls the oil temp. It's brand new. Well, I could check the seating on it. Well, the last guy checked it, just go down the list. I'm like, okay, well, I'm stumped, bring it in. they'll bring it in, and the first thing I do is take out the oil temp bulb, and I would take a hot plate, and I would get the oil up to boiling, like 250 degrees, 300 degrees, and then I would use a calibrated thermometer, and I'd put it right there at the airplane. My buddy would help me. And so he would stir it with, he brought in his wife's candy thermometer, it was awesome. And he would stir the oil with the two things, so and I would read it out. And he would call it out. He would go, all right, so we're, let's say red line here. What would red line be? About? No, way lower. About 195, 200. So we get down to like he'd call it out 200, and I go, okay, 200's right there. And then he would keep going, go 180, and I go, okay, P equals 180. And then you go, all right, it's 175. I go, M equals 175. See what I'm doing? So every letter equaled something, and we'd hand out, and so always usually turned out that the gauge was so far off that the oil was really cold. I'm like, well, good news, bad news. Good news is I actually, I found your problem. It's just your gauge. Bad news is you actually are running cold. We got to figure out how to get this oil hotter. So, true. All right, so so in the winter, 80. Summer, 100 weight. That was a long story to tell for that one. All right. Another example. That can be one. Yeah, thanks. Two. True story. Phillips XC20W50. That is a non-synthetic. A non-synthetic oil. All right, so this is what I was talking about earlier, multiviscosity. Oops, multivis. Instead of writing viscosity, I can just write vis, and we'll save time. And
SeaWorld.
Oils. Use additives. Additives that allow the oil to act like two different oils. Oh, I actually wrote this. Like spaghetti.
It's just completely backwards.
Yes. When cold. Let's try to. It's not spaghetti. It's spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
When cold, it is small. Or the ball bearings in it are small, and then when hot, it gets fat. Not the body shame it. Yeah, I know there's got to be some other thing in life. Cold, shrinkage. I don't know. I can't think of anything
I
else.
just can't think of it right now.
It'll come to me.
What?
Okay, additives.
Tasty.
The additives where so the viscosity change is not linear. So I couldn't plot it out and say, okay, well, at 100 degrees it's here, and 200 it's like this very linear thing. So it doesn't work that way. It's additives where so that viscosity change is not linear. So sort of repeat during starting. During starting and cold operation, the oil acts like the lower number. Like the lower number. That would mean you get quicker lubrication. Which would mean less wear. It's really funny the difference between starting your car and starting your airplane. And you would think it's the same, but it is absolutely so different. It's worlds apart. Right? You start your car. What do you do?
Let it warm up for a couple minutes.
Think about it. I mean, you get in. What do you do?
Turn the key.
Turn the key.
Turn it on.
And then kind of look for seatbelt. You got the radio. Where's my phone? Get that out.
Plug it in.
Yeah, you're doing all. Paying no attention to what's happening.
No.
Okay. And that's just that's.
Yeah, depends on what you drive.
You got an old Mustang or something. Come on, baby, keep going.
Some of your gauges.
Okay. But when you start an aircraft, not only is it, I don't know why, it's one of the most difficult engines there are to start, aircraft engines, especially if it's fuel injected. There are a lot of mechanics who just, they don't do well, but they just can't start fuel injected engines. It is a real trick. And it even gets down to some engines just want to be started a very specific way. An owner of an aircraft will probably know, I'll get in to start the aircraft and start to do my procedure. I'm like, it'll never start that way. You have to do it this way. I'm like, what's weird? But it's like, I know, this is the way this one starts, even with the same line. But anyway, they can be very difficult to start. Carbureted engines, not so much. They're reasonably easy to start. Like my airplane, I prime it. I got a big primer, you pull it out, plunge it in, give a couple primes. And then you start it, and the first thing you stare at the oil pressure, because you only have seconds to make sure you get oil pressure. Because you have to remember, you can't hear the engine as well. I mean, you can, but prop makes a lot of noise. But we stare at that oil pressure. That's our first thing. That's we're focused on it. And all the engines I've ever started in my life, and there have been a lot of them, never had a problem. I mean, you probably could have ignored it, but you get 30 seconds. That's a long time for a very expensive engine to not have oil. And if it takes 30 seconds, I would question that. Anyway, yeah, we're just thinking, staring at that oil pressure. During normal operation, at temps, at operating temp, the oil acts like the higher number. The oil acts like the higher number. Which is going to give you thicker protection. And in theory, somewhat of a more even oil pressure. Oil pressure fluctuates a lot in an aircraft. The POH, or Pilot Operating Handbook, for my aircraft says as long as it has at least 5 psi at idle, you're fine, which is barely off the zero. But there's a green line, quite a green line, for normal operation. They pull back to idle, and it's like, ooh, that doesn't look good, but that's normal. All right, let's see, we had mineral, ashless dispersant, multiviscosity. Multiviscosity gave you 2, so they come in 2 different flavors. You have, and really, there might be one other multivis out there, but for the most part, I mean, these are the oils that are out there. This is it. It's not like I'm just taking this very small sample. I mean, I think I'm missing 1 or 2 at the most, because they start coming out with some newer stuff. But for the most part, that's it. All right. So we had the multiviscosity, which had both semi-synthetic aeroshell and non-synthetic, the Phillips, and then we can talk about full synthetic. Full synthetic was tried but failed. Tried and died. Class action lawsuit demands that thousands of TCM 470, 520, and 550 engines that used Mobil AV1 synthetic oil be grounded for teardown inspection and overhaul at Mobil's expense. We urge owners not to panic. This is Mike Bush.
That means
pour a bunch of Mobil 1 in there, get a free overhaul.
Oh yeah, there's the Victory oil. That's it. Okay. That's that's serious stuff. I've mentioned before that Chevron accidentally got a little bit of Jet A in some of the 100 low lead here in town, and everybody got new engines. Yeah.
I mean, are you still able to get some AV1?
Are you still able to get that Mobil AV1?
That's a free overhaul for you.
Yeah, I don't think it would work now. Yeah, I bought this on eBay and put some in, so I get my overhaul, please. Okay, was tried, tried but failed. I actually wrote Aeroshell found increased cylinder wear and mobile was sued, so I don't know if I'll write that because that sounds weird. But all right, synthetic oil such as Mobile AV1 no longer available as a multi-viscosity synthetic oil with an AD additive package similar to other AD oils. Synthetic oil has better lubricity or slipperiness than petroleum-based oil, as well as several other advantages, like what? I already told you these.
Constant, seal.
What was the big advantage over multi-viscosity?
The way it changes, it starts at one, and then when it warms up, it gets bigger.
Yeah.
It's not evaporate or break down easily.
It doesn't coke up. Doesn't coke. It's a huge deal. Unlike petroleum products, full synthetic does not carburize or coke under high heat, nor does it lose its viscosity with prolonged use. But get this. On the other hand, synthetic oil strips off parts readily because of its low viscosity at room temperature and its extreme slipperiness. It's also poor at cleansing because its molecules are too slippery to hold scavenged lead, carbon, and other particulates in suspension very well. Okay, so we do have a significant problem with our engines, and that's lead, because our fuel is so heavily leaded that we have to deal with lead. So all of these oils are specifically designed to deal with the lead in our engines. So this just did. So poor cleansing action, particularly with regard to lead, that was responsible for Mobile AV1 being withdrawn from the market. So tried but failed.
Change if they move away from leaded fuel?
I think it could. I don't know about the slipperiness part, but it seems to work fine in automobiles. But then again, how often we let our cars sit around for a month? Tried but failed. Let's see. What could we put? It was too slippery. Too slippery. So it slipped off of the parts. Does not suspend. Well, we'll just say lead. Lead well. What else? So poor cleaning action. So I tell you that, and now we can go back a thought and go, okay, well, wait a minute. Now how about the other multi-viscosities then? So not the Phillips, because that's 100% mineral oil, but we go back one to Aeroshell 15W50, and that is semi-synthetic. So you get half of the benefits of this with half the benefits of the other. But then I look at it and go, well, what are those benefits? Well, it doesn't coke. Okay, but you have half of it does. So, okay, so get rid of that. All right. It doesn't break down. Okay, I like that. Half of it doesn't break down as well, but
The other half does.
the other half does. We don't, we only use our oil for 50 hours anyway. 25 to 50 hours. I'm just making up stuff as I go along. Lasts a little bit longer. The oil. So I don't know. Take your pick on that one. Some people, I have found that a lot of mechanics really zero in on a specific oil. And that's it. There's two things you're careful when you're talking to a mechanic, always, or not mechanic, a pilot. And you do very carefully, and it's like religion, right? Just, some people are like, no, you don't. I don't care. I'll talk religion all day. But you don't talk about the oils, and you don't talk about running Lena Peak. Whoa, geez, man. When I was at light combing school, when they start talking about Lena Peak, one of the guys in my classmates, he is he's such a cool guy. I want to say he's the editor of Pilot magazine and a flight director for NASA. The flight director, not just the flight director. And he got into it with the teacher about Lena Peak. And I wouldn't have argued with the guy. He's got some horsepower going on. So he knew his stuff. He kind of, huh?
He got some horsepower.
He does up here. He's a smart guy. I enjoyed him. I can't remember his name, but all right. Special oils. All right. So those are the basics, but then we got to have some additives going on here. So And this all started out, my memory is with the, I told you about the H2ADs. Okay, that was, Lycoming made it 0320 H2AD, and then they made a 360 version. And my take on it is they were specifically designed for certain applications. And I know the 0320 H2AD was 150 horse for the Cessna 150s, and it was a pretty lightweight case. So the engine was a little bit lighter. And so it didn't have the accessory case that bolted on. It was all wraparound. And like I said, the rocker arms, like you have those nice rocker arms, these were stamped like a car, disposable. And then the tappets, they weren't like the ones you have, that you could pull them out. So it was very automotive-like. And it had so many problems, especially with those tappets and the camshaft. It was a disaster. And so they came up with this stuff. And the name of it is LW16702. I mean, that's just the name we gave it, and that's a part number. So rather than giving it like some cool name, like, you know, I don't know, whatever you call it, Super Juice or something, they just, we'll call it LW16701. So this was an anti-scuff agent that you actually had to buy from Lycoming and pour into this engine to keep the cam and lifters from scuffing, and also the fulcrums and the rock arms, I think, had problems. So then they came out with this thing called the T mod for these engines, T for tappets. And what they did is you'd take the engine apart and you'd send out the case and they'd bore it over and they put these little tiny tappets, much fatter tappets, more like Continental has. And then they did some other things, and I don't know, the way I hear some people talk about it, that engine had so many problems. First of all, you don't name an engine AD because it's H2AD again. But I've heard people say that, you know, now that they've corrected all the problems of that engine, it's like one of the least problematic engines out there. I don't know if there's true to that, but anyway, I guess I had to say they're not so bad anymore. But anyway, so Lycoming came out with this special additive. So let me see, Lycoming. Now, so they started with that, but now they want it in everything. So advises the use of LW16702. I usually I always forget the 16702. I tend to call it the LW additive. So it's anti-scuff. Anti-scuff / anti-wear. Not underwear, anti-wear additive. Additive in, quote, all Lycoming engines. Lycoming piston, or is it piston? Aircraft. Lycoming piston aircraft engines. Except engines with they have a wet clutch. So except engines that, I'm going to write this, that utilize engine oil for friction type clutch.
Dry clutch.
Not a dry clutch. Would it be a wet clutch if you're using engine oil sprayed on with clutches?
For friction. I thought that said for.
Aircraft engines, except engines that utilize engine oil for, use engine oil for friction type clutch.
Okay.
So if you have a friction type clutch in your transmission that uses engine oil, what do you think would use something like that?
What?
What kind of aircraft?
Oh.
Helicopter. There you go. So there's other stuff on there.
Thank you.
So yes, if you've got a Lycoming engine that's got a clutch built into the transmission that's getting engine oil onto it, you cannot use this anti-scuff, anti-wear because it's a little too slippery. And the clutches have to grab. So it works that well. Yeah. Let me see. I already told you that. I don't need to write it down. The LW anti-wear. It was first used in the H model. 0320s used a different. Okay, so Aeroshell W80 plus W100 plus and 15W50. And let me see, and Phillips Victory already have the LW 16702 in the oil. So you don't have to go buy it. It's already there. There we go, we have that. W100 plus, W80 plus, Phillips Victory. By the way, that's a straight weight, just 100. And there's the additive right there, the LW 16702. Notice it's not called anything but engine oil additive, part number 16702. Very creative people, those Lycoming engineers. Well, it's a suggestion.
Don't take it, just accept it.
It's like best when used by. It's like,
So if it's good by.
yeah, best, better, good. I'm always telling my family that. They threw it out. Why'd you throw that out? Well, it's because it was expired. I'm like, it says right there, best when used by. Best, better, good, people. It went from being best to just better. It's going to be better for about 2-3 weeks. Then it's going to go to good for another couple weeks. Then it's bad.
Like my underwear.
Yeah, you wear it forwards, turn it around, flip it inside out, turn it back around.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
You get at least.
8 uses.
I haven't talked much at all, and I haven't, and I probably won't, because Larry's going to talk a little bit about light sports. But, you know, that's really an up-and-coming thing, is light sports. They're not up-and-coming. They're here. They're already upped and caned. So your light sports that run Ramos engines, they run Rotax engines. So they're going to get their own special oil. So Aeroshell makes oil for them. So Aeroshell Sport Plus 2, and that's for 2 strokes. And Aeroshell Sport Plus 4.
For 4-stroke.
Yep. Oh, you ruined it. It was going to be a surprise.
Oh, sorry.
For 4 strokes. And why? Why do they get their own oil? I mean, you know, what do they put Rotax in, other than light sports?
Pipistrel. Pipistrel. Trainer.
Pipistrel is a light sport, whether or not you choose to believe it. I said, what do Rotax have besides?
Yes.
Where are you going to find them?
Snowmobiles.
Where?
Snowmobiles.
Snowmobiles. What else?
Jet skis.
Jet skis, yeah.
Lawnmowers.
Lawnmowers.
I have no idea.
Really
It's
big ones.
inside it.
Right, they're out there, right? Do they use them in like side-by-sides and all that kind of stuff now?
No, not really.
Like Polaris and stuff, where they have their own
Oh
engine?
yeah, actually yeah, they do.
Okay. So are they using Aeroshell in them, or they use...
I think it's regular.
Okay, so what's our problem? Why can't we just carry it over? Is this like a...
Because we're fancy, we're different.
Because we're fancy.
Why do
Marketing.
you say arrow in there?
Yeah, this is Aero.
Leaded fuel.
Thank you.
Leaded fuel.
Leaded fuel. Back to the leaded fuel problem. So that's why we're going to do that. So
Smart.
oils developed for non-certified engines. These things aren't technically certified due to use of 100 low lead. Oh, I guess I could mention the fact that there is diesel. Who ever heard of a diesel aircraft?
Diamond 60?
I did last week.
Technically be Jet A. Compression ignition Jet A. And we happen to have one here at the school. Our Cessna 172 outside that you probably have not noticed has been converted to a Feeler diesel that runs Jet A. So that would be aeroshell. Aeroshell diesel. 10W40 full synthetic.
Full synthetic.
Well, wait a minute. How
Hold
come
on.
how come we can use full synthetic suddenly?
It's diesel. It's different.
So we're not using
Leaded.
Lead.
100 low lead. Okay. Full synthetic and also their diesel ultra. I don't know what the difference is.
Diesel Ultra.
All right, so let's talk about additives. So most of my aviation life, I have been anti-additives. None. And I've been under the guise of, if it was really that good, don't you think the manufacturer like Aeroshell or Phillips would have added it? Let's just take the LW additive. They took a look at this additive and said, that's good stuff. We're putting it in and selling it, right? Because Lycoming even came out and said, you got to use this stuff. I mean, our engine's got a problem. This is a solution. That's good. Whoa, hey, this stuff works great. Use it in all of our engines. So, and then if oil companies pick it and go, yep, that's good stuff. We're using it. So, I've always been curious about these additives or, snake oil. I just imagine, what's that movie? It's with the dragon, Elliot. What's that movie?
How to Train a Dragon?
No, way before that. Elliot the Dragon. It was Pete's Dragon.
Oh,
Pete's Dragon. Yeah. See, I think of the old movies. Pete's Dragon, and they had the guy, back in the days at the wagon, they would set up shop and sell snake oil and remedies, and yeah, so snake oil salesman. So it was the Grogans, I think, with the bad people. And check me out. And so I was kind of thinking, a lot of this. Well, so I read some really good articles. One of them talked about, getting a whole bunch of these additives and investigating and breaking them down and finding out what they were. I guess they use like spectrolysis and stuff when you burn them and whatnot. And they found out that like one of them was simply just lightweight machine oil. It was just like they were selling it for like crazy stuff. Marvel Mystery Oil has been kind of a big thing. I mean, that's been around for a long time. I know mechanics that swear by it. And I think Marvel Mystery Oil has a purpose. It is a solvent, and it will loosen up tarnished and gummed up stuff inside the engine. Personal opinion, I don't want to use it in my airplane, but I don't think I'd have a problem using it in my car, my wife's car. She's got a bad tap at her little Nissan. I think I'm going to try it. But people would pour it in their gas tank. You pour it in your gas tank, it hurts the octane rating and can cause detonation. So you don't put it in your gas tank. There was, I went through a period of time in my career where TCP or try something, what do you call it? Teflon, liquid Teflon. That was a big deal. People go, I want that Teflon treatment on my engine. There was no evidence that ever worked. AvBlend is another one that's still out there that's big. The article that I've read on AvBlend, and
Is that the blue stuff?
it's green with a little checkered on it.
Oh.
The last thing I heard about it was the research was it doesn't hurt anything, but it doesn't appear to help anything. The only one that I've seen in my recent reading and research that is actually widely recognized as being actually worth something is called CamGuard, which has a lot, I think, of phosphate in it, if I'm not mistaken, which if I was looking at that LW picture over here, that's what that contains. I'm not certain on that. I just kind of noticed it. Yeah. I don't know. It was just something that just I noticed. So I'm giving the CamGuard a try. So it is very expensive.
Just as loosely related, so you can make it short, but like, what's your take on like stuff like seafoam and fuel system cleaners and stuff like that? Do you really think is it worth it? Like, I guess is there an aviation equivalent?
Like Tektron and stuff like that?
Like down the hatch, fill the tank up kind of stuff.
Okay, so when I was running the cylinder shop, like I have a little desk, people in the door, and people bring in their cylinders and sit on my tool bench, workbench. I could, back over in that corner, I could look and go, so you run a car gas, huh? Like, whoa, how do you know? Okay, anybody who ran Chevron and Shell gasoline, their intake ports were so clean that it was cleaner than the day this engine came out of the factory. I mean, you just spot it across the room. Just insanely clean. And anybody running 100 low lead, you're like, it was dirty and nasty, and you put your finger in it, it came out stained all blue from the blue staining and stuff, and it was kind of gummed up. So as far as cars go, oh, heck yeah, I love running Tektron and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, I know there's stuff that's already in the fuel, but like
Yeah.
stuff like over the counter O'Reilly's.
Yeah, like the hot
bottles,
thing,
like
fuel
fuel
injector
injector
stuff you put in there to clean the gas tank. put
Well,
it
if
in,
it's,
and you fill up.
yeah, okay, if it's the same stuff that Tektron has, then yeah, it works, but I don't know if it works just to put one bottle in.
Oh, okay.
I kind of think it's got to be an ongoing thing. And then you get into a whole nother problem. It used to work great, but you get a car now that has direct injection, gasoline direct injection, it bypasses it. So you're still getting all the, because the EGR valve is still blowing gunk into your intake system. That's going across your intake valve, and then the injection's over here. So this is getting gummed up and nasty. And so there's no point in it now.
Interesting.
That's
Just always curious about it.
my opinion based upon very little research. Okay, additives. We'll finish this one up. Okay, so big thing is do not use unapproved additives in aviation. I'll just leave it at that. But I will throw in that if we look at what happened with Mobile One, if you want to put in an additive and you want to take the responsibility for the engine,
Go ahead.
knock yourself out. Make sure you have enough money to cover the expense of doing so. So as a mechanic working on other people's airplane, I never really pushed anything. I'm just like, hey, whatever you want, that's fine. When we come back, we'll talk about actually selecting oil and what I like.
Break time?